Quick warning, the video will be showing spoilers, so if you want to avoid that, you can just listen in. I'm not going to be talking about anything specific regarding the content, so if you are sensitive to spoilers, I do suggest you just listen to this like you would a podcast. Here's a condensed version of my thoughts and feelings while playing Elden Ring. Alright, where's the boss room? I mean, he's so
Is it
much
this way?
healing already. Oh god, it's an ambush. Oh no.
Right here.
Oh no, the damage. Oh my goodness. Dodge that. I'm not. Why am I down? Why am I down? Why am I so much healing already? No, you're going down. You're going down. Yes! It's done. It's over. I've won. So where's the next boss room? If you understood what that was, then you're probably already sold. But if you want to hear more, well, stick around for the review. Elden Ring became the most anticipated game for 2 years in a row according to some sources. Personally, I've been excited for it since it was announced. George R.R. Martin and Hidetaka Miyazaki creating a fantasy world together, one that is ruled by swords and magic no less, is a dream come true. Seeing that many iterations of the Soulsborne franchise have been refined to the last detail, it only makes sense that the game would be expanding laterally rather than vertically. To be honest, I had my concerns for the genre being adding itself to the ranks of open world games. I have grown weary of playing one after the other, where it simply felt like the same game that looks or plays slightly different. Why would I want a game I know for having borderline unfair level and dungeon design to be leading me to wide open areas that may potentially have nothing around of note? Am I going to have to deal with busy work that feels repetitive and net minimal rewards? Will I be able to finally do Dark Souls fishing? Well, turns out the answer to all those questions is no. So sadly, I still can't fish in this game, thereby making it a terrible JRPG. I'm joking. Anyway, the game has managed to integrate itself into an open world in a way I was most pleased with. This isn't a game where we drop the Dark Souls formula into an open world, where it makes concessions and changes to be more like open world games we presently know. Rather, it makes every square inch of the vast land you can explore be that Soulsborne experience you are so familiar with. Somehow, they made a player like me, who became constantly cautious of my surroundings, be willing to stride out there and explore whatever seems to stick out. Even a little bit. Even if that means potentially fighting something I'm not ready for, because it rewards your willingness to explore many times over. So let's go over what I've found and experienced on Elden Ring. The Elden Ring, an almighty artifact that blesses all that exists in the lands between, has lost its magical grace, thereby affecting everything around it. You awaken as one of the tarnished, men who have been forsaken by this blessing. You are then tasked to recollect the shattered pieces of the Elden Ring and hopefully restore the previous order of this world. The question is, are you up to the task? So for those who are not familiar with how we review, we look at how the game looks, sounds, and then how it plays out, what's to play in it, what extras it has, and then have a conclusion. So let's begin with the graphics. If you are at all familiar with any of the Demons or Dark Souls games, you'll immediately notice that Elden Ring is directly lifting things from previous games to include in this one. You'll see the same weapons, attack animations, spells, and more. Still, I think it looks great because it adds enough new things to the experience along with these. The world itself being the obvious one to point out, but they also include new enemies, bosses, and characters to interact with. One of the cooler things here is that if you can see it, you can probably go to it, even that glowing tree in the far distance. Another cool thing is that wherever you are, so long as you're at a certain vantage point, you can just sit back and enjoy the view. The world is designed in such a way that you'll want to go to certain points of interest because it sticks out. Whenever I'm going towards a certain destination, there's a good chance I'll notice something else and go there and get distracted for a good while. There's also a weather and time system in this world, so you can cycle between day and night. There will also be times that it'll be windy, sometimes it'll rain, and sometimes that rain includes lightning and thunder. Honestly, I don't know what this does to the game other than make fights that much more epic, but I welcome the extra effects, even though it's probably punishing my video card a bit. Oh yes, I've been reviewing this on the PC by the way, one that's equipped with a GTX 1650 Ti and a Ryzen 7 4800. So far, the experience has been pretty smooth while keeping Elden Ring on high settings, with maybe a few short hiccups when it's dynamically loading a new area, but that's really nothing to be bothered about. It also has a lot of settings you can tweak so you can get your battles and skirmishes running smooth like butter. Music and sound effects are about as expected. You have your calm, atmospheric ambient music while exploring, your more intense drum-focused BGMs during combat, and your oppressive tense scores when fighting bosses. Speaking to NPCs and hearing them talk has been mighty impressive. I personally wouldn't have minded some more cutscenes here and there, since they do deliver quite an amount of dialogue from time to time. It also helps plenty that I understand what they're talking about most of the time as compared to previous titles.
Allow me to divulge a little knowledge. The inheritors of the Great Runes, the Shard Bearers, we of the Round Table know the location of 5 of them.
In a nutshell, Elden Ring has a lot of what I've already seen before, with the addition of maybe a few new things here and there. Still, the aesthetic that every element carries and the design of the world around you show that it was crafted with care, with the goal of amazing us every step of the way. So I'm not really surprised, but I am impressed, is what I'm saying. So let's move on to the new mechanics that Elden Ring presents, particularly ones for combat. I have said before that a lot is being lifted from Dark Souls 3, so I won't go over those where, you're rolling, the weapon capacity, the weight capacity, all of that. We're gonna go over what the new ones are. So first off, you can jump. So those little knee-high ops that would screw you over during these more tense skirmishes can now be easily overcome. Also, this means that there will be enemy attacks that are best dodged by jumping, and you kind of have to remember that. This started in Sekiro, and you better believe it's here now. This also makes climbing more vertical structures in the game possible, and that secrets could be found behind, well, shorter walls. Next, they've added a new standard move for shield bearers, a guard counter, whereby tapping a strong attack right after blocking, you immediately counter with an attack that could crumple your enemies, allowing you to do a downed attack or a visceral attack on them. This is a bit of a risk reward though, as it opens you up as well. Honestly, I think this is rewarding defensive players more, but I suppose this is a way of shield users to keep up with the improvements given to other playstyles. Weapon arts are now possible to transfer, so if you like a particular special attack attached to a weapon, you can now extract that and put that in a weapon with better stats. It's like transferring gems on a weapon. This way you won't have to worry about being stuck on a subpar weapon, just so that you can keep playing the way you like. Another huge new thing for combat is being able to summon spirits to fight in your stead. I know this sounds like it would really change how you play, but Elden Ring will restrict where you can use them, particularly therefore enemy camps where you'll fight a small army or boss rooms. Though, from personal experience, I don't really recommend using them for bosses. They may distract them for a while, maybe deal some damage, but ultimately they're rarely worth the focus points required to summon them. Also, there's a new steed you're given to easily navigate through the world, Torrent. This will allow you to bypass most fights that you don't want to take, which makes traveling out in the open world all the more convenient. Now, I thought that that's all that there is to it, but it turns out there's a point to having mounted combat. More on that later. Finally, there's the activation of the Great Rune through consuming a rune arc, which is this game's version of humanity, won't just boost your HP now, but every stat will be increased by 5. So not only are you offensively and defensively enhanced, but you can also equip gear, memorize more spells, or just get something that's just out of your stat reach. Maybe increase your weight capacity just to keep yourself within the mid or light category, or just make hybrid builds that make it more feasible to access more weapons. And you can keep doing this so long as you don't die. So based on my playthrough so far, it's become clear to me that victory in Elden Ring is no longer governed by simply memorizing enemy locations and dodging through their attack patterns. It now pushes you to rely on weapon arts, switching between ranged and melee combat, knowing when to use items, and well, knowing how to dodge, block, and counter that boss combo. The game isn't trying to become more appealing to wider audiences, but is trying to test you in more dimensions. Knowing what you know and how to use whatever you have with you, that is what Elden Ring wants. So next is how the story is and what can we fight in the game. If you took my introduction of the title to be something that, well, sounds a lot like Dark Souls 1, I'd have to agree with you. Being asked to collect 2 pieces of the Elden Ring, then bring it to its destination sounds pretty par for the course when it comes to this genre. You can say that the straightforward nature of the story can feel like simple window dressing to contextualize your reason to fight a boss. We'll just have to leave the finer details of those who research the lore, and yes, I am kinda looking forward to Vadi's new videos when they come out. Character creation is rather robust, where you can design how you want your character to look like rather extensively. Here I decided to try to remake a certain character from the Fate franchise. I'd say it's close enough. At the very beginning, you're also asked to pick a starting class, which are more like presets with starting items. Since you can custom build anything you want from the get-go, I chose Prisoner, thinking I could exploit Elden Ring's new leanings toward magic users to my advantage and get far enough into the game within the review period to have enough to talk about. I thought I'd have an easy time, and well, I did not. I've already mentioned before that the open world has a lot to offer so long as you're willing to look for it, and this became clear when I came across some dungeons that I would have to say are hidden in plain sight. Elden Ring handles the open world like how From Software has handled every game they've made from the very beginning. It's not interested in holding your hand. You'll have to find the information relevant to your quests or whatever you're trying to do on your own. You can talk to NPCs to point you in the right direction, maybe buy that information from a merchant. This holds true for the main story quest and any other side quests you might run into. Some of them appear to be missable, so you might want to keep that in mind, though the rewards for these quests tend to be rather minor. For example, there's this island where you want to go to at the earlier part of the game if you want to wield the power of dragons. Just that you can't travel there by foot. I searched the beach for maybe a boat or teleporter of some sort that can get me there, but it was only when I returned sometime later that I discovered a cave, which doubled as a dungeon, where I found a way to get across. Other things you'll encounter in the open world are sectioned off areas full of enemies to fight or get ambushed by. These range from abandoned ruins to military camps to giant castles. Some of them are just out in the open where how you clear out the enemies is entirely up to you. Others give you a choice of either taking a fort head-on or trying to sneak around them, while you meet less but sneakier resistance. And others are strictly linear that you'll just have to run through them to get to the boss room. Speaking of bosses, it's a mixed bag. You'll have your traditional Souls bosses that are easy to deal with so long as you dodge correctly. Then there's these bosses that will absolutely destroy you the moment you let your guard down. Some are lifted directly from elsewhere, like these guys and horses. I fought maybe 4 variations of these horseback bosses by now, and they have similar movesets when it comes to regular attacks. Where they vary is what they either do on phase 2 or what kind of spells they throw out. One will have magic, the other a giant shield, the other one will have nothing at all. Some of them end up being so predictable they're not really that fun and you're just waiting for the boss encounter to end. Then there's the story bosses, which have clearly received the most work. Not only do they have attacks and moves I'm completely unfamiliar with, but their AI really gave me a run for my money. Normally with these games, using ranged combat, especially magic, makes even tougher bosses a trivial affair. But in Elden Ring, they will act depending on what you're doing. Casting magic, they can catch you. Sticking close to punish a whiffed attack, they can counter. Running away to heal, they have something up their sleeve. In hindsight, these fights are very much winnable if you understand how they act and respond. But that's exactly what I had to relearn. It's not learning a new game all over again like Bloodborne or Sekiro, but there's enough there to challenge what you know should work given your experience from the Soulsborne genre. There's also a new style of combat you get to do while riding on your horse. It's designed for open world encounters with giants, so you have the mobility to escape their wide and sweeping attacks. Honestly, it's quite clunky from how I experienced it, but despite that, I did enjoy it. It gave purpose to the wide open world setting because you need that much space to dodge the flaming breath of a dragon or a wide swing of a giant. Sometimes you needed to fight a bunch of lobsters, and suddenly that joke about fishing is coming full circle. I don't know what's up with Miyazaki and seafood, but they're here now and they're here to stay. By interacting with NPCs, exploring uncharted areas, and diving as deep as you can into dungeons, I found weapons, resources, items, boss fights I was completely unprepared for, and even quests. There are even things that I found that I have no idea what they're for yet, like painting. There's just so much to explore and find in the world that it was easy to get lost, but it was a good kind of lost because I always ran into something that made it worth my while. Even fighting a boss that I was already way too strong for will give an Ashvar or spell or item that made the trip worth it anyway. It's been a real long while that I've actually enjoyed an open world game like this. I play it until I fall asleep and wake up wanting to explore that one thing I noticed before I went to bed. It's just great. It reminded me how open worlds can be very fun, and I'm just glad it's here. Now for the extras that the game will offer, like the online functionality for Elden Ring, which is actually not enabled yet during the review due to some security issues that developers are currently working out. So I advise that those who are looking to play online multiplayer, particularly for PC, make sure that they've sorted this out before going online. That said, we can expect the usual modes of play we can access from previous games: co-op, versus, invasions, and more. However, remember that during the network tests, cross-gen network play was possible, but not cross-platform, meaning PS4 and PS5 players could play together, but not much more than that. As usual, you and other players can leave notes for each other all over the map to help people on their journey or lead others astray. We know some people do that, and sometimes we find it funny. Playing it on PC does have its setbacks. It's pretty clear that the experience is meant to be played on the controller, as mapping of the commands and shortcuts on the keyboard and mouse was very uncomfortable and I would have to say unnatural. It also seems to think that I'm only using an Xbox controller, which is a minor issue, but I know some people out there are bothered by being unable to recognize the button prompts. I mean, I am. Other than that, the game has been operating smoothly and never got a crash through the entire time I was playing the game. So if you're playing this solo, I recommend picking it up day one. Alright, let's bring this home. Miyazaki had started a genre of difficult combat that's an interesting mix of roguelike and hack and slash RPG. Every time he starts a new title with the same concept as a foundation, we were ready to learn an entirely new game all over again. From the slow and tactical combat of Dark Souls to the rapid and visceral rush of Bloodborne and Sekiro. This time around, he has chosen to wind back to the more conventional form of combat we have come to know and many have tried to replicate. While so much of the game seems familiar, you see that he's not afraid to try new things. Where I feared that From Software would get trapped into the pitfalls of a modern open-world game design, they have pressed on and managed to create a new IP without losing the identity of what they're known for. It's not that every fight, dungeon, or encounter is perfect and memorable, but rather how everything you come to witness here is definitely from a Soulsborne franchise. Nothing feels tacked on or just there for the sake of it. At this point, the story is hard to see a full picture of, so I'm not sure how George R.R. Martin's influence over the story and characters will define my expectations of this game. The story appears to be following the natural progression of what we come to know Miyazaki for. If they do manage to surprise me, I'll probably talk about it when we get there. But in general, Elden Ring has met my expectations in terms of the wondrous world it presents and the challenges it hides within it. I can't wait to continue playing this game. Elden Ring graces us with its presence, scoring a 5 out of 5. This title is available on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, and PC. Now for me to offer you an accord. If you like this video, go ahead and click that like thing. If there are other things that you would like me to cover, why don't you just go ahead and comment it? If you just want to be updated on the stuff we come up with, well, you can follow us on the following social media. That's going to be Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you just want to visit us once in a while, see what we come up with, we do make reviews all the time as much as we can. You'll find all of that on raymarufiles.com. So again, thank you for sticking around, and until next time, I'll see you, Tarnished.